This is the Sixth Man Show, an Orlando Magic podcast, with your hosts, Kevin Tucker and Jonathan Osborne, covering all things Magic basketball. By fans, for fans. Go Magic!
What's going on, Orlando Magic fans? You guys are back with the Sixth Man Show. Today is September 16th, 2024. Jonathan Osborne here, as always, joined by my co-host, Kevin Tucker. Kevin, today is Manager Carmen's birthday. Wow. Shout out Manager Carmen. Happy birthday. I love you. 30 years old today. Woo! Pretty wild.
Yeah, happy birthday, Carmen. Appreciate you. Jonathan, I'm just having this realization right now. We're doing something that we so rarely do. Like, I can count on one hand the number of times we have pre-recorded an episode. So right now, just so you know, we're recording this on Friday night, September 13th. 99.9% of the time, we record the night before an episode comes out, just because we always want to stay up to date on all Magic stuff. But as I'm sitting here, Jonathan, as you asked me this question of how I'm doing, I realize I may have set myself up for something really awkward, because it's my tradition, the day before a Florida State game, I wear my Florida State hat, a Florida State shirt, and then obviously wear, a different shirt and the same hat on game day. But we're recording this on Friday, and so I'm doing my tradition. But this could get really awkward, and I'm probably going to get roasted on Monday should Florida State lose to Memphis on Saturday, which is absolutely not out of the realm of possibility considering how we've been playing thus far this season. And so I am absolutely opening the floodgates potentially to just being roasted in the comments when this airs on Monday morning on YouTube. But anyway, I just realized that as you asked me how I was doing. So we'll see how Saturday goes, I guess.
Well, for your sake, I hope that doesn't happen. I hope they win. No offense to any Memphis fans out there. I don't know how many Memphis and Orlando Magic fans we have, unless it's like the last couple of years because of the Penny Hardaway connection. But for your sake, I hope that doesn't happen. And really, the reason that we're recording this is we're, as a family, going on like our last like summer vacation. Like, school has already started, but just the way that it broke this year for us. So this weekend, I'm going to be with one of my best friends, and all of our families are together. And it's going to be my Giants versus his Washington Commanders. Both teams are terrible. Of course, my team has been getting made fun of to the ends of the earth. So that's going to be a pretty interesting weekend. So the odds are is if FSU loses, I'll be there, misery loves company, sort of as they say there. But we have a great episode planned for you today. We sat down with our friend Brandon Kravitz from 96.9 The Game and the Zone Heads podcast. He broke some news with us right here on the podcast, so make sure you stay tuned to listen to all of that. But we appreciate Brandon for taking the time. Kevin, we made a post to Twitter/X, and every time somebody says Twitter in real life now, everybody says, well, is it X now? What are we supposed to call it? And then I always say, I'm just always going to call it Twitter. So the other day we posted to Twitter just a photo from a game, this past year with the Magic players wearing like the classic star jerseys, and said, man, like, we're really going to miss these jerseys this year. And that, of course, got a ton of likes, a ton of engagement, because that's the point, right? We're like engagement farming at this point in the season, but I really am going to miss those jerseys. Yeah. But we always get people saying, like, why don't they keep them? Why don't they bring them back? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so there were definitely a lot of questions, on Twitter and stuff. Like, how do you guys know they're not bringing it back? Why aren't they bringing it back? All that kind of stuff. And so how the NBA works with these anniversary jerseys, or I should back up, these throwback jerseys, is they only re-release them on anniversary seasons. So this past season was the 35th anniversary of Magic basketball. So the Magic got to have a throwback jersey.
Isn't every year a anniversary?
Technically, I guess. But one's ending in 5 or 0, correct, I guess, is a better way to put it. So the next throwback jersey that the Magic will wear on the court will not be until the 40th season of Magic basketball, which is weird to say that that's the next anniversary. 40 years is kind of crazy. But yeah, so that means what we know to be certain for this season are the jerseys that the Magic will have are the Icon, the Association, and the Statement jersey. Those three are staying the same from last year to this year. We know what those look like. The only question mark still out there is the City jersey, which I was looking it up. I think they released or unveiled the City jersey like the last week of October last year, like right around the start of the season, maybe just a little bit after. So as we sit here, probably, in the next 5-6 weeks, maybe, if that schedule stays the same, we'll see the City jersey for this year come out. But yeah, I mean, it could change. They could do it earlier. They could do it later. Who knows? But yeah, that's what we know. Icon, association, and statement jerseys, they're staying the same. Unfortunately, the throwback is gone for the season.
That's really sad, to be honest. And obviously, you know, we've had this conversation a few times on the podcast, but some of our listeners are like, yeah, you guys have talked about this 15 times, but we have new listeners that find the show every week, every couple of months. So we want to let you know it's not that the Magic don't want to do it. It's they literally can't. Like it's a Nike thing, right? Like, unless you're just able to go all the way back or you're like doing a full rebrand, whatever, you're not really going back to that jersey outside of those anniversary seasons. Like you saw it with the Detroit Pistons, last year or the year before with the teal jersey. You saw it with the Houston Rockets, I believe, last year, if I'm not mistaken. So that just sort of is what it is at this point. Don't love it. Definitely going to miss those jerseys. I think as much as I'm going to miss the jerseys, I might miss the floor just as much, if not more. But I'm looking forward to seeing whatever the city edition jersey is going to look like this year. And do we get a new floor this year with that? I don't really know. Always look forward each season to see like what the new jerseys are going to be, because you and myself, we're idiots and we can't help but buy the newest, shiniest thing. I've even bought jerseys that I didn't like. The only jersey that I did not buy because I thought it was absolutely hideous was the third year of the orange that had like the orange gradient going down the side, that had like the Magic font and then the other numbers on it. That one was just really bad. I couldn't do that one.
See, I'm the opposite. I bought that one. That was Franz's rookie year. So I had, I did this thing back when we had lottery picks where I would buy, every year we have an exclusive jersey for that season. And so I've been doing that when we had lottery picks. I would buy their jersey for that season. So that was Franz's rookie year. I got that one. But to me, that was, I like that one more than the original. Like the first year orange one with like the ORL weird font and all that kind of stuff.
That one was bad.
Very bad. So I didn't buy that one. But
I don't think I have that one. Maybe I do. I know I have the white and orange one, right, with the pinstripes. I have that one. I don't think I bought the others, but I could be wrong on that. I'll have to take a look in the closet.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say about the throwbacks is like, it was special to have them, but I also love the fact that like forever in Magic history, when we look back on the season that was, which is one of our favorites, when we see highlights or pictures or whatever, like we can attach those jerseys with those memories and those moments. Like that is really special. That's kind of like an unintended byproduct of NBA/Nike doing this thing. But because it coincided with such a special season, like that is kind of cool. That being said, obviously, I still wish we could wear all of our throwbacks all the time, but I guess that kind of is what it is.
Something that I've been thinking about recently, as recent as yesterday, the thought came into my mind is that as I've aged and I've filled out, like in some good ways, some bad ways, as I slap the old gut here, I no longer fit into the medium jerseys that I used to purchase. Now I'm a large. Like I could fit into an XL. But I keep telling myself, like, no, you're going to lose a little bit of weight, and the larges will continue to fit fine. If they're tight around the chest and the arms, that's a good thing. We just don't want it tight around the belly, obviously. But these medium-sized jerseys that I have, like, I have the beloved gray Pride jersey with the sleeves of Elfrid Payton. I have the first edition of the Stars jersey that we had that had, like, the blue and white stripes across the middle. Yep. I have that of Evan Fournier, right? Like first of all, the Evan Fournier jersey would still be cool to wear. I can't believe we brought up Evan Fournier on three straight podcast episodes here. But having throwbacks, like there are some jerseys that are cool to wear as a throwback. Like, oh man, that dude's been a fan since way back when. I can't really get on board with like me squeezing into that Elfrid Payton jersey. So I'm going between like, do I keep this for my kids? Maybe when they're older, they'll like it and they'll want to wear them. Or do I just find a Magic fan who happens to be a medium that might want these old jerseys? Or do I just keep them? I really don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm in the same boat. By the way, I'm pretty sure Adidas's sizes were like they fit bigger than Nike. Maybe I could be off, but I feel like I remember like the Adidas medium being bigger than the Nike medium. So I have some old. I've
put on some poundage. Okay. I would disagree with that.
Okay, all right. Maybe it's just whatever. But yeah, so I definitely have some. I'm in the same boat, by the way. I started medium. have to wear large now. It's just I'm taller now, you know. I'm just taller.
Definitely taller sideways.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'm in the same boat. So I have some old. I'm trying to think a couple. I definitely have a JI medium that I can't wear anymore. I've got a couple other ones, and so I can wear it, but I'm also someone's dad now, and so I have to think about when my kid gets a little bit like my kid doesn't care now, but in a few years my kid's gonna be like, Dad, don't wear that, and so I got to put that lens on. So, but yeah,
because it's too tight or.
It's too short. That's the biggest thing. Genuinely, for the mediums now, it's too short. Now, part of it is, it has a lot more distance to cover,
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, I'm about to lose weight anyway with the surgery, so it's all coming off. But yeah, so it's a little bit too short, and so that's why. But yeah, I'm team large now as well, and large is beautiful, as they say.
Large is in charge, baby.
There we go. I like that.
Have they given you any kind of estimate, like you are probably going to lose this much weight?
Usually
or
it's about 15 pounds. Yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Maybe I should get heart surgery.
Oh my
I need to lose about 15 pounds. Maybe that's the way to do it. Who knows? No, I just need to stop eat. Like, full disclosure, we had like my daughter turns 4 years old on the 14th. So tomorrow as we're recording this. So we had some family over tonight. Earlier in the day, I had some McDonald's. We're getting ready to have everybody over, and my wife is like making dinner for the kids, like chicken nuggets, pizza, frozen pizza, that kind of stuff. And I turned to her and said, "Hey, like, what are you making for dinner for us?" And she's like, "What do you mean? I'm not making anything." So now you and I are going to finish recording this about 9:00. I haven't eaten since like 1:30, and I have every fiber of my being wants to drive straight to Taco Bell. That is my problem. I need to stop doing that.
McDonald's Taco Bell doubleheader,
dude,
on the same day.
That's I wish I could tell you that is more rare than it is, but it is not that rare.
I know it's not rare for you. I know it's not rare for you. I'm just saying it's
I'm not proud of it.
Not a recipe for those 15 pounds, but
no.
I will say, I don't know if it's like the weight loss, the gym, the golf lessons. I heard you had a good day on the links, today. Yep. Not bad.
I sure did. Yeah. I wasn't going to bring it up. Kevin brought it up. I had the best golf round of my life today, thanks to nobody else other than Brian Mulvin, who is my PGA professional. And I guess I can call him my golf coach, but he's a listener of the show. Hooked me up with a lesson a few weeks ago. And it like, if I can hit the ball every round like I did today, I'll be so happy out there. I was hitting the ball today like I've never been able to do it before. So shout out to Brian Mulvin.
We got to celebrate the wins. That's what I'm here for. We got to celebrate the wins.
We got to do that. People don't care about some people will care about my golf game, but if you don't care about golf at all, you're gonna be like, this is so stupid. Why do you guys talk about this? But okay, Kevin, what do you say we go ahead and get into our conversation with our friend Brandon Kravitz?
Yeah, it's a good one. Let's listen to it.
And now, Orlando Magic fans, we are joined by a very special guest, friend of the program, host live on In the Zone from 3 to 6 p.m. on Monday through Friday on 96.9 FM, The Game, the Orlando Magic pregame radio host, and the host of the Zoneheads podcast, our friend Brandon Kravitz. Brandon, what is going on, man? Thanks for taking the time.
The pleasure is all mine. Big fan of everything that you guys do, so it's cool to link up. And this is like, usually I call Magic Media Day the unofficial start to the basketball season, but it kind of feels like hopping on a pod with you guys is like is at least the pregame show to that experience. So basketball, as far as I'm concerned, this conversation means basketball season is here.
I love that. So for you, Brandon, obviously, like Jonathan mentioned, you do a lot of the stuff with the Magic broadcast throughout the season, but you also have your radio show. I'm curious, what does the off season really look like for Brandon Kravitz? Obviously, October to April, May, that's booked up with a lot of Magic stuff. What does the off season look like for you?
The off season is non-existent.
That's what I thought.
I mean, it's 365. It's at this point now pretty much 7 days a week, because I also do work with rotowire.com as a NFL, NBA, and MLB props analyst. So between that and then once football season starts, I'm hosting a fantasy football show that airs clean across the state of Florida on Sunday morning. So the grind never stops. I will say that at the end of basketball season, I am able to get away a little bit. Usually end up missing the NBA draft just based on the way that my annual beach vacation lies, and I get away for a week, spend some time with the family, and that's my chance in June, which hopefully we get to a point where the Magic are in the finals and I'm not able to step away in June. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But for right now, immediately after the season, I'm usually off to the beach, and then next thing you know, it's July slows down a little bit, but by the time August ramps back up, I do so much with the football season that it just never really feels like it stops. But I love it. And during basketball season, I mean, it is straight up drinking water out of a fire hydrant with everything that's going on, and it's what I live for.
I want to take you back to 2021. I know that you say typically you're able to step away for the draft, but you were in then Amway, now Kia, the night of the draft in 2021 when Scotty Barnes goes 4, and your famous line, you're about to pass out on the table that was in front of you, Magic draft Jalen Suggs. A lot of us have been high on Jalen for quite a while, and he had the flashes, his rookie year, but it took some time for the offense to come around. I wanted to pivot pretty quickly to that. How, maybe not surprise is the right word, but what has just been your take on his development over the course of the last few years?
Yeah, and I will say I was on vacation when that draft went down. I drove back to Orlando to be part of that draft show because that was such a huge draft for the team. I didn't want to miss it. And then I knew that when the Magic landed the number 1 overall pick, I wasn't going to be able to pull that card twice. So even though that one was huge too with Paolo, I had to miss that show. But you kind of knew the Magic could get that pick done quickly and then be done for the night. But having 2 picks inside of the top 10, that was just such a pivot point for this franchise. You had to get those right. You had to at least get 1 right. The fact that they got 2 is incredible. And yeah, it definitely took Jalen Suggs a minute. He was so rocky. He was just so sped up early on in his career. That you can see that he put the work in. I remember talking to him last year at Magic Media Day. He had this glow about him, and I said, "You feel different. What's different with you?" And he said, perspective and work. He kind of took for granted the fact that he made it to the NBA, and he felt like at that point he had made it. And I think he took his foot off the gas a little bit, and these are his words, not mine. And then he realized that when you get to the NBA, that's actually when the work starts. It's not when it stops. So I think he had to have that wake-up call. A lot of professionals do. They come into a lot of money. Their ultimate goal growing up is to be a professional basketball player. You get to that point, but then what's next is actually being a good professional basketball player, and that takes a whole other level of work. This is a full-time job. And I think he finally treated it like that. And we're seeing the benefits of that work pay off because of the season that he just put together. And hopefully he's able to grow from that.
Brandon, I'm curious, looking back at this past season, one of the most fun Magic seasons in quite a long time. Lots of highlights, lots of special moments. Are there any moments in particular that stand out to you? Maybe 1 or 2 that for you were maybe some of your favorite moments over the course of the 2023-24 season?
I have such a bad recall that I would have to see the highlight to give you a really good answer. I can tell you that for me, it's more about the remembering the vibes in certain moments. And I could not even begin to tell you guys what game this was, but it was a home game in the middle of the season. It was probably on a Friday night. The Magic are rolling. They just went on a 10-0 run. Franz Wagner was a big part of that. And they started playing Mr. Brightside from the Killers on the loudspeakers. And Franz is on the sideline singing along to the song. They're showing it on the Jumbotron. Everyone's going nuts, just not necessarily because of that. That was just sort of happening in the background. But I remember that feeling in the middle of the season, and I'm like, this feels like a party. And it felt like that all the time. It's just that image of him singing that song on the sideline. And then the rest of the year, whenever they would play that, I would sort of grin to myself because it was just so vibey. And this team is that. They brought this energy, and then the fans matched it, and then they fed off the fans. And this team was so good at home because of it. It was this kind of back and forth. Of course, Jalen Suggs, who we just talked about, a huge reason why nobody fed off the crowd more than that guy. So I wish I could give you a better answer than that, but that's one that just sticks in my mind of Franz Wagner singing Mr. Brightside, which, by the way, if you're listening to this, I expect you when you're done listening to this episode to put that song on in the car and picture exactly what I'm talking about.
As soon as you said it, like the guitar riff, the din, 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 it started playing in my mind at the moment that you said that. And we expect these seasons to be more exciting from like a winning perspective and the championship contention standpoint. But I don't know that there's ever going to be a season that will be able to match that exactly. Like in terms of the vibes, I'll always look back very fondly on that season. When we talk about this past season and as this team, exceeded the expectations from the outside and they go on this run and they have this very competitive first round playoff series. Well, did any of that surprise you last year?
As far as their competitiveness in round one?
Just the season in general, exceeding expectations, how great Paolo looked in that first round series.
I can't say it did. Them finishing as the 5 seed, I don't think is something that we predicted going into the season. If I remember that I had somebody that was a fill-in for me on my show who predicted exactly that, and we all called him crazy. And I'm optimistic when it comes to the Magic, and I thought he was a lunatic. But it wasn't because I didn't think they could put together a good season. It was more of a credit to the Eastern Conference. And I think seeing the East fall apart around the Magic and the Magic stay steady was the surprising part. But as far as what they were able to put together, no matter the seed number next to their name, wasn't a surprise at all. We felt like that natural progression was going to kind of hit another level. You could tell going back to the start of the season, these guys all came into the season pretty confident. Markelle Fultz was calling playoffs from day one. You saw the success they had against teams like Boston from the year prior. So the confidence was there. They got off to that terrible start the year prior and were a completely different team. So for them to be competitive isn't a surprise. And then once you saw them kind of get going in the season and how good they were defensively, one of the best teams in the league in terms of defensive rating all throughout the year, it never really dropped off. That's the kind of team that's going to be successful come playoff time. It was a tough draw because Cleveland does a lot of the same things the Magic do, except they have a dynamic scorer in Donovan Mitchell and then a guy that can help out when he goes cold in Darius Garland, and that's one thing the Magic just don't have right now. But playoff experience, you wanted that. You got a 7th game, and it's hard to ask for anything more than that. It was disappointing in the moment, but if I told you going into the season, Magic are the 5 seed, Game 7, Round 1, that's here. I give you mystery box over here. You want to check out mystery box? No one's taking mystery box. So in that sense, it was an incredibly successful year, but I can't say that I'm shocked.
Brandon, last question I have about last season before we talk about the offseason and the season ahead. What do you think are some lessons that maybe were learned this past season? Maybe it's certain lessons the players learned, the coaches learned in their first, playoff series, or the front office maybe learned about the team that they have. Do you have any thoughts, maybe any lessons that might have been learned from this past season?
Yeah, I mean, I think Franz, you could start there. The way that he dipped off in the playoffs, leaving a little bit in the tank. I think this team is going to have to learn how to not just perform well, but how to optimize performance. And that's where a guy who I just interviewed recently, Arnie Kander, who is the low-key MVP of this team, and he specializes in exactly that. It's not about just being out there and playing. It's about being dialed in and being at your absolute best when you can. And it felt like between FIBA into the season, always play through everything, you appreciate the grittiness and the toughness of this team, but it kind of felt like they petered out, ran out of gas. The offense fell flat. So I think that those are things that this team will probably manage better. I hope we don't see too much load management because that sucks for fans, but just in terms of the way that these guys take care of their own bodies and the way the team takes care of them, I would expect that to be a little bit different. And then I think Paolo realizes he's got to take this 3-point shot way more seriously. I think it actually got worse in terms of just the hitch in his jumper from year 1 to year 2. He got better at almost everything else, but you're not going to hit that next level and be an all-NBA player if you don't have a consistent perimeter shot. And so I think that that's one of those things that he looks at. It's just so hard to work on that stuff in the middle of the season. That has to be something that you put a lot of work in the offseason. So the team as a whole has to get better, but it starts with P5. And I think that that's something that when we end up talking to him in a few weeks, I guarantee that's probably going to be tier 1 as far as things that he's focused on. And those are things, when you figure that out in the middle of the year, like the jumper's just not there, there's really not a lot you can do about it.
Since Jeff Weltman is sort of stepped into the head of the table running the Orlando Magic, at least from the basketball operations side of things, we've heard so much about like evaluating the roster. And I think if there's a lesson that they are taking away from that season and from the playoff series is what tweaks do we still need to make to the roster? And I think one of their biggest moves of the offseason in bringing in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope showed that. Obviously, we've been talking about three-point shooting for a better part of the last decade. But Brandon, what was your initial reaction to the Kentavious Caldwell-Pope signing, and how do you see him fitting in with this team?
I mean, it just fits like a glove. It's the perfect add to this team if they weren't going to take a big swing. And I think that's the one disappointment from this past offseason, but you also have to kind of give an incomplete grade because as much as we want this team to just kind of push all the chips to the middle of the table, so to speak, and get into championship mode, they might not feel like they're there yet, or they have their eye, whatever we're looking at, whatever ranking on Bleacher Report we see, like they have a much more intensive Excel spreadsheet inside of their offices at the Advent Health Training Center. So I at least put my faith in people that are smarter and more invested in the day-to-day than we are. Doesn't mean we can't be frustrated when you don't take a bigger swing and you don't see whoever it is. I mean, you could throw out all these random names, Donovan Mitchells of the world, that they didn't go out and try and acquire. But if you were going to go into free agency, this was going to be the guy. Paul George would have been great. We would have all celebrated that because of the star quality that he brings to the table. But if you want Paolo and Franz to be the stars on this team, you can't bring in somebody who plays a very similar role to them that needs the ball in his hands and take away from that. What you need is a spot-up three-point shooter that doesn't diminish your defense. Well, KCP was obviously that guy. And then the sort of rub that he got from other NBA veterans, Draymond Green stepping up and saying that was them telling us as NBA players, guys that are still in the league, that they're taking winning seriously. And that, as a fan, as an analyst, means more to me than anything else. Seeing other NBA veterans say that sort of move is what moves the needle for other players in the league, is saying we got to take this team seriously. So just based on the sort of motive behind it and the fit defensively, the need of three-point shooting, you'd be hard-pressed to come up with anybody else that would have been a better fit.
Brandon, you touched on this a little bit, but I'm curious. The Magic, they add KCP, they draft Tristan da Silva. But outside of that, no major moves. And even if you think about the guys that aren't returning, Markelle Fultz not going to return this year. Joe Ingles not returning. Chuma Okeke not returning. Outside of those, it's pretty much the same team coming back. Again, essentially, we kind of did this last offseason where we just signed Joe Ingles, basically. I'm curious what your thoughts about that. Obviously there's pros with the continuity, but maybe some cons with the fact that we saw some of this team's shortcomings in the playoffs. I'm curious what your thoughts are about the team basically running it back.
Yeah, and that's sort of what I was getting at, is that I think it's a fine strategy for right now. And if I could see into the future, I would probably give it an even bigger endorsement. At some point, you're going to need to do something because the Celtics are a super team. The Knicks just built a super team. The 76ers added Paul George. And while none of us are probably going to pick the 76ers to win the championship, that's still a really dangerous team and definitely one that's better set up to do it right now with the pieces that they have than the Orlando Magic. The Cavs just beat you in the playoffs, so you can't with confidence say that you're much better than they are. And the Milwaukee Bucks were a giant disappointment, but they still have one of the top three players on planet Earth in Giannis. So at any point, they could turn things around, find somebody that's better than Dame, or Dame turns back the clock, and boom, they're better. Indiana, I mean, I thought they took the league by storm. Same exact record as the Magic last year. They have offense figured out. What if they figure out defense? So at some point, continuity is nice, but it's not going to get you to that next level when other teams are not going to sit idly by and just wait for the Magic to pass them. This is a dogfight in the East. This conference is getting better as every day and every year passes. So I'm good with it right now, but at some point, they're going to have to do something. Otherwise, they're going to get stuck in the middle, and that's the last place you want to be.
This episode of the Six Man Show is brought to you by Jam Hot Chicken. Jam Hot Chicken is proudly bringing Jam's culture and hot chicken to the heart of Winter Park, as Jonathan is so beautifully modeling the Jam Hot Chicken t-shirt on YouTube there. That's spicy looking, just like Jam Hot Chicken is spicy. They're a Nashville and LA-inspired hot chicken shack, locally owned and operated in Winter Park, Florida. They are located at 400 West New England Avenue, Suite 13, and beautiful Hannibal Square there in Winter Park. As you guys know, we are big fans of Jam Hot Chicken because they're big fans of us. They're big fans of you, the Orlando Magic fan community, and big Orlando Magic fans themselves. And that's why we love to partner with them and excited to partner with them again for this upcoming season. Definitely check them out at Jam Hot Chicken on all social media. You can also check out their website at jamhotchickenfl.com to access the menu. They also are now available on Uber Eats. So if you're in the Winter Park area, definitely check them out. Uber Eats. If you're feeling hungry, but you want to stay home, maybe you're not feeling great, get some jam. Hey, that's a good thing to loosen up the sinuses. Say you got a little sinus congestion here.
It will do that.
Get the Jam Hot Chicken going. It'll loosen that up real fast. So yeah, definitely check them out. Like we said, Jam Hot Chicken on all social media. But when you go to Jam Hot Chicken, just be sure to tell them that the Six Man Show sent you.
Kevin, I don't know what you were referring to when you were talking about that being spicy, but I got wildly uncomfortable there for a moment.
I call it like I see it.
This episode is also brought to you by Irish Magic Mike, Jamel Miller, Bruv Sal, Escoso Fresca, and Maria. Who are these people, Kevin? These are some of our elite and Hall of Fame tier patrons. What's a patron, do you ask? A patron is somebody that went to patreon.com/the Six Man Show, where for as little as $2 a month, they can help support the Six Man Show and do everything that we do in terms of the podcast and different content. We're going to Media Day in a couple of weeks. You all are helping make those things possible, helping make our Magic coverage possible. So if you are not a patron, and again, you would like to join the Patreon and help us grow this Orlando Magic community, again, you can find us at patreon.com/the Six Man Show. And now, back to our conversation with Brandon Kravitz.
One of the other big moves this summer, Brandon, was not obviously an acquisition, but the extension signing of Franz Wagner, the huge rookie max extension, lots of money being thrown at him. A lot of Magic fans okay with it, some not okay with it. What are your thoughts about the huge extension Franz received this summer?
I think you had to do it. That's just how much you pay guys that are he's up for an extension. He's proved that he is one of the best young wing players in the NBA. And while he's not necessarily your tier one, I would point to Boston as an example. Up until this last contract extension, Jaylen Brown was paid more than Jason Tatum. Your pay grade doesn't necessarily reflect your value to the league. It reflects your value to the team. And I don't think any Magic fan would argue with how important Franz is to the Orlando Magic. Where they get caught up is comparing Franz to other players around the NBA. But it's about what the Magic are building, and you're paying him because of what he means to your team. If you think that the Magic are significantly worse and that you would torpedo the build, I can't even call it a rebuild because it's built, but if you would torpedo the build with Franz not being a part of this team, then you've just answered your own question. I think the bigger question, though, is what do you pay Jaylen? Because I felt like the Franz contract, is he overpaid? Sure. There are a lot of overpaid players in the NBA, and if they end up winning, then it doesn't matter. And that's where I would point to Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown, as good as he was overpaid until they won a championship, and then he's properly paid at the exact same rate. So if this works, then it's fine. But Jalen Suggs is not at the level that Franz is. He's not the B or the Robin to Paolo's Batman. He's third fiddle, and he has clear deficiencies on offense. So what kind of dollars is he willing to accept, and what are the Magic putting in front of him? I'm a little surprised that deal hasn't been done yet. Here we are, just a couple of weeks away from Media Day. We're close to preseason. I thought we would see this by now. I think it probably says that Jalen Suggs is betting on himself, which could make for a hell of a season. I think as fans, you should hope that contract doesn't get signed because players that are playing for that deal tend to kick it up a notch.
And I think the only thing that in Kevin's conversations about that is like last year, going into last season, there was no Cole deal. We went to Media Day, wasn't a deal made. And then basically right before the start of the regular season, obviously it's a lot less money. Jalen's annual number will probably be closer to Cole's entire number for whatever that's worth. But that's definitely something that we're going to be keeping an eye on here. But when we talk about next season, right? Magic overachieved if we're talking about the outside perspective, had the competitive 7-game series. Like you talked about, the East has gotten better. Mikal Bridges to the Knicks, Paul George to the 76ers. The Celtics still are what they are. Another year of Giannis and Dame over in Milwaukee. Cleveland obviously is right there. The Pacers, they improved after they made the Pascal Siakam deal last season. Where do you see the Magic sort of falling in terms of the Eastern Conference heading into next year?
I think realistically, you kind of hope they stay where they are. And then if you move up a spot, assuming that there's not any sort of disaster in the East, if the Magic can still stay in that 4-5 range and hopefully 4, where you realize how important that home game is when you get to game 7. So you hope for that. But I think anything above the 4 seed is just being unrealistic because remember last year, part of the reason the Magic were the 5 seed is because things started to fall apart. Miami wasn't as good. They dealt with injuries. Philadelphia didn't have Joel Embiid for most of the year. If those things aren't, the 76ers will have a better regular season record than the Magic. And so then that pushes you down. You just hope that you can be better than Cleveland and you can remain as good or better than Indiana and stay above that play-in line, because I think that would be the big disappointment. If this team goes from last year having a round 1 series without having to play their way in to then having to do that in this season and you haven't made any moves at the deadline, I think we're all going to get a little bit antsy at that point. But I believe in this Eastern Conference. I really think the Celtics are probably in a class by themselves, but I really buy into what the Knicks are building. I think that's a very real team. Jalen Brunson is such a dog, especially when you get to the playoffs. He's proven that now in 2 different stops. He was like that in Dallas when he was stepping up for Luka, and then proved it again with New York. They fell apart in the playoffs health-wise, and then they just strengthened their roster. So I think that's a really scary team for the NBA.
Brandon, I'm a scheduled nerd. The people that listen to our show, watch our show, they know I love the schedule. I love when it comes out. When it comes out, I just spend so much time looking at it and analyzing it and predicting all that kind of stuff. And I'm curious if you've had time to look at the schedule yet, like really look at it. And if so, what kind of things do you look for, Brandon? Like we talk to the Bally guys and they always look at the road trips because they're traveling and all this kind of stuff. But I'm curious, what does Brandon Kravitz look for first when the schedule drops?
Is there a game on my son's birthday? Would be the first one. And wedding anniversary.
Yep.
And then, once I get past like the dates that aren't, Christmas, which the Magic aren't at that stage yet. And given the way that they are disrespected with national television, it's probably going to be a couple of years before we have to worry about working on Christmas. But for me, when it comes to the schedule, I want to know, how is it starting? What does that schedule look like at the front end? When does that dreaded West Coast trip come? And what does that big homestand look like? And that's one of the things that fascinates me about this year. December 8th through December 29th, you have Phoenix, Oklahoma City, Miami, Boston, Miami, New York, and then you finish with Brooklyn. That is a gauntlet, but it's at home. And so if the record's decent at that point, and then you take care of home court, remember, we're talking about a pivotal part in the year. This is right before we flip the calendar to 2025. You're feeling pretty good at that point. So those sort of pivot points in the year, long homestands, long road trips, and just kind of forecasting how difficult that's going to be. I think that those are typically the things that I look for. Back-to-backs, those duplex sets. I always find those interesting when you play the same team back-to-back. Who are those matchups? And then, the in-season tournament, I guess, falls like somewhere in the top 10.
A lot of this roster has stayed the same, Brandon, but with key pieces of the rotation, on their way out. We talk about Markelle Fultz. We talk about Joe Ingles. There's a lot of youth, and minutes that are up for grabs in that second unit. When you look at Gary Harris, probably going to be in that bench unit. But when we look at Anthony Black, we look at Jed Howard, we look at Tristan Da Silva, a guy that we actually didn't even ask you about, being drafted this summer and looking really good in the summer league. How do you see minutes sort of being broken up in that second unit, and what kind of opportunities do you think that these younger guys are going to be able to see?
Yeah, I wonder how different this is going to be from last year. I'm a little surprised that Gary was brought back because it felt like the team was starting to move away from him. It felt like he was moving away from the team. It just felt like so obvious that he wasn't going to be part of the squad, but they brought him back. Clearly, they value his steadiness, his professionalism, and Gary's a good overall guy. They're so big on character in the locker room, and it's obvious with the personalities that they have. You're definitely going to see more Anthony Black. I think the question really becomes how much Jet Howard do you end up seeing? Because this team does need 3-point shooting. And I love what he showed in the summer league. The guy's clearly been putting in work, but it's not like he was lighting up the scoreboard in the G League. So do you want to see more there before you give him run? Caleb Houston plays a similar role. They haven't really been able to shake him from that second unit, at least being a guy that's kind of buried on the depth chart and part of that main roster. You know, Jonathan Isaac is going to have a role and perhaps even slides into the starting lineup at some point in the year like he did in the playoffs. But I think for me, it comes down to Jet Howard. That's the big question mark. I'd be shocked if, after what I saw in the summer league, I'd be shocked if Tristan da Silva wasn't a regular part of this rotation. He is just such a perfect fit for what this Magic team wants to do. He's already a pro. He's so smooth, and he's got an outside shot too. I didn't realize how good of an outside shooter he was. I definitely bet on Colorado at one point early in the NCAA tournament, so I was vaguely familiar with his talents, but really blew me away as far as the way that he carried himself on the basketball court playing in the summer league, which, you know, we always try and take it with a grain of salt, but it's all we have in the summer, so it's hard to do that.
Well, Brandon, we appreciate the time. Can you let our listeners know where they can find you if they're looking for more Brandon Kravitz?
At Brandon Kravitz across Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok is the best way to do it. I'll keep you updated, probably to an obnoxious level, on everything that I've got going on. And you can find me every single day, Monday through Friday, on FM 96.9 The Game from 3 to 6 p.m. live on In the Zone. And then throughout the Magic season, I'm on Magic broadcasts. And perhaps this is a time for an announcement, fellas. I was, for the last couple of years, only doing the home games, pregame, halftime, postgame. As of this year, I have signed on to do all 82 plus a deep run into the postseason.
Wow.
So for the first time that I'm announcing this.
That's
Brandon
amazing.
Kravitz, breaking news on the Six Man Show. I like it.
I had to give
Brandon,
you that. You guys do so much for the Magic community. I had to give a little bit back.
We appreciate that. We take it wherever we can get it, man. We really appreciate that. And again, thanks for taking the time, and we're looking forward to seeing you in a few weeks at Media Day.
All right. Appreciate it.
A big thank you again to our friend Brandon Kravitz. Breaking news here on the Six Man Show. It's not very often that we get to do that, so we appreciate Brandon breaking the news and taking the time. And Kevin, I just feel like everyone that we talk to, right, like you and I doing this during the offseason, it can get a little monotonous, right, as we continue to talk about the same thing, sort of like talk in circles. But whenever we get like a fresh perspective on like what other people are looking forward to in talking about the Magic, and when we look back on the season that we are coming off of, I just can't help but get so excited. And I just wish that the season was starting now. So appreciate Brandon coming on the show, taking the time, and just taking a few minutes to get me fired up about Magic basketball coming back in a few weeks.
Yeah, I love when we get to ask the question of like some of the favorite memories that people have. Like, think about all the guests we've had, even over the last month, 6 weeks. You know, think of the Bally Quartet or whatever we called them, right? Like some of the memories they shared, some of them, you know, things we knew about. You know, someone mentioned the Denver game, but then you have David Steele talking about meeting Jerry West backstage in Los Angeles. Like that's freaking cool. And then tonight, you know, we talked to Brandon, and his was he tried to play it down like, sorry, I don't have recall or whatever. That's a really special moment. Like that moment like truly encapsulated this season and like you mentioned, the vibes of this team. And so like just to hear the whole spectrum, that's why I loved having these guests on, especially this offseason. We've had, you know, this same round of guests, obviously some new additions, Kendra and so on and so forth. But we've done this kind of circuit every offseason, but coming off of a really special season made these kind of recap and like reminiscing conversations that much more special. So that was really cool. And then also, yeah, to hear kind of his thoughts about this season. I've said it before on the show. I'm starting to get terrified. Like the fact that we ask everybody and everybody's excited for this season and everybody thinks we're going to be around the same, if not better. Everybody thinks we're pushing for home court advantage. Now I'm just scared because the pessimist and the Orlando Magic fan in me is like, this is too good to be true. Like, there's no way this is going to happen. And so I'm a little guarded. I'm a little scared, but at the same time, I'm obviously excited too.
Did you see the tweet going around social media that Brett Usher posted a couple of days ago where he said, I believed in this rebuild, and it's a photo of Nikola Vucevic, Tobias Harris, Victor Oladipo, Elfrid Payton, and Aaron Gordon wearing, by the way, those gray Adidas Pride jerseys.
Yep.
Like that just feels like a lifetime ago. And I understand what you're saying in terms of like the apprehension of like, oh, just feels like it's too good to be true because we've been through so much. And although the Magic did exceed even our wildest expectations from last season, we were still really optimistic. People that were close to this team, the outside didn't see it. We have known for the last few seasons, especially once we brought in Jalen and Franz, of what we're building here, and that like, no, like this, it's real this time. Like, I know we said it was real last time, but it's real this time. And I think I still feel that. Like, what makes me nervous is that it's not just us saying it now. The outside world is saying it too. Like, Kendrick Perkins was on ESPN, I think today or the day before, and he was asked like, what team do you think could break into the top 4 in the Eastern Conference? And he said the Orlando Magic. So we've been asking for respect. We've been asking for recognition and coverage, and we're getting it. And now I hope that we just don't implode beneath that pressure.
Here's the thing, though. Like, at least we can all take a little bit of solace in this, right? Like, that rebuild that you referenced, we've already passed that. You know, like, this team is already
correct
in year, 2 or 3, depending on whichever one you want to choose, of this rebuild is already better than all the years of that rebuild. And so at the very least, we know it's not going to be that bad. So I'll take that.
How much would you pay to watch a 7-game series between the 2023, 2024 Orlando Magic and like the 2015, 2016 Orlando Magic?
A 7-game series? That's a 4-game series, brother.
I'm sorry. Correct. How much would you pay to see a 4-game series of that? Because it would be
that would be like just the weirdest, Inception multiverse thing ever. It'd be like the 2015 me would be in such pain, but the 2024 me would just be enjoying it a lot.
Look how far we've come.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh man. All right. That's going to do it for this one. Appreciate Brandon Kravitz taking the time. Appreciate you all for listening. For Kevin Tucker, this has been Jonathan Osborne. You all have been listening to The Sixth Man Show, and we will catch you guys next time. See you.
Thanks for listening to The Sixth Man Show. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and Spotify to get new episodes downloaded directly to your phone. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to give us a 5-star rating and a review. It helps out the show a lot. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Sixth Man Show. We'll catch you guys next time. Go Magic!